Let's start with the story around Winston Peters and Chippy kind of saying to them, "No, we don't want to be with you. We don't. We don't want to be with you." And this is the story from last night, but that's because it was announced yesterday afternoon. And I got some thoughts around this as to sort of. There's some good things about this announcement, and there's some absolutely ridiculous, stupid things about this announcement. But let's have a look, shall we?
Chris Hipkins has drawn a line in the sand, vowing he will not, under any circumstances, work with Winston Peters after the election.
Good.
The Labour leader saying New Zealand First is a force of instability and chaos. Our senior political reporter Benedict Collins joins us live shortly. First, his report.
There were handshakes and pics aplenty.
Thank you so much.
As Labour's leaders strolled through these Wellington markets today.
That's my mum. Yeah.
But do they think Chris Hipkins can win the election?
I bloody hope so.
Yeah. You think he's got a good chance? Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We love him.
If I was to put money on it, I'll put it on Chris.
Which one?
Oh, you know, sorry. I put it on Labour.
National and ACT together.
Yeah.
Got to form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think it's time we had a change in New Zealand of government?
Yes, of course. It's been 6 years, so we need some change.
A short time later, though, it was full politics mode.
I'm ruling out working with New Zealand First and Winston Peters after the election.
He's had enough.
And then there's Winston Peters. He's seeking to make trans people the enemy in this campaign.
Oh, that's just humbug. I'm not.
Humbug.
So what's behind Labour's move?
I made it really clear at the beginning of the year when I took on this job that before the election I would set out who we can and we can't work with, and that's exactly what I'm doing today.
Jacinda Ardern seemed to get on pretty well with Winston Peters. I mean,
don't tell Winston's voters about that.
Since then.
Oh, like I said, I think the positions that he is taking at the moment, he's courting as many sort of disaffected groups as possible and trying to stoke fear and division in order to cobble together a 5% party vote. Well, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-trans.
So this part of the conversation, and I'll probably play something a bit later on. I think I've told this story before. I interviewed Don Brash one time, and Don Brash, and I've heard Christopher Luxon say this, Don Brash had said publicly that, you know, running to be Prime Minister is just basically a big job interview. And I played Don Brash a piece of audio where he wouldn't answer a question. Like Duncan Garner was like, you know, what would you? And he was like, this is a diversionary tactic, and he wouldn't answer it. And I played it to Don Brash, and I said to him, in what world do you live where you can go to a job interview and not answer the questions? And to his credit,
is an answer.
Well, to his credit, he said, yeah, that's fair enough. One of the things I got from this, and I look, if I'm being fair, and I don't have to be, but I will be, this is just a short clip. I haven't got the whole press conference. Maybe there was several times where he said the same thing, but it feels like Chippy is answering questions here. And I'll play you a clip a little bit later on. I won't play you the whole clip, but there's like a 5-minute, you know, like a stand-up presser where when they were talking to Luxon about ruling out Winston, he says at least 5, if not 6 times, almost word for word, you know, we are aiming to give National our party vote. He basically says, he never says he's going to rule them out. He also says our message is to vote for National. And he says like 5 or 6 times in a 6-minute stand-up presser outside an event. And he just wouldn't answer the question. And I kind of felt like after I'd watched that, removed the bullet from my forehead and then watched this, I was like, at least he's answering questions. He's being straight up. Now, that's a part of the ploy here for Labour. That's a part of their messaging, which I'll get to shortly. But we'll just get to the end of this bit first. Chippy. Chippy. Why am I calling you Chippy?
You call him Chewy?
Yeah.
And me Chippy.
All right. So we'll listen to the end of Chewy, and then me and Chippy will have a chat about it.
Well, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-trans.
Oh, with the greatest respect, Mr. Hipkins, I've been around a whole lot longer than you, and that sort of nonsense won't cut it in this campaign. People want real answers for real concerns.
Labour vowing it won't work.
Real concerns, like who has a winky in my bathroom?
With Winston Peters, no matter what.
That will be Christopher Luxon's problem.
Well, as I said, I've been very clearly saying he's not above the threshold. He's not in Parliament. And what I'm focused on is making sure I maximise the National Party vote.
Chris Hipkins is basically acting like the child in the room.
But Mr. Luxon could have a problem on his hands.
This is really
Mr.
interesting.
Peters and Mr. Seymour.
So now we're going into the conflict between Seymour and I almost like. Obviously, I want the left to lead the next government, right? Yep. And from where I'm saying, I haven't said this publicly before, with a fairly heavy influence from the Greens, right? Where I'm sitting. Mm-hmm. But if that doesn't happen, I can't wait to see National and ACT and New Zealand First try and form some kind of coalition. That will be fucking hilarious. It won't be good for the country. I won't be happy about it, but something about that negotiation between Winston and Seymour, I do like a blood sport. I'm just saying, it'll be interesting to watch. That's what I'm saying.
Or don't exactly like each other.
Selfish, narrow, inexperienced extremism.
I don't think anyone's been able to
Winston said that Seymour has extremism with what Winston's been saying recently.
work with him. That's his track record. People think he deserves another chance after all that he's done to this country. He doesn't.
And as for the big party leaders,
They are a coalition of cuts and chaos.
It's a coalition of chaos.
Sorry,
and more
what
of
was
the
that?
same.
I didn't quite hear that. What was that?
Coalition of cuts
Maybe it
and
was
chaos.
garbled.
Yeah, it wasn't. That's not
Coalition
good
cunts.
messaging. No cuts, not cuts and chaos. Not good messaging though that you take on Luxon's talking point to be your talking point. It does look a little bit weak. Let's be honest.
Oh, look, they're just repeating each other's words now.
well, you did right about that, Mr. Peters. It
So
looks like chaos all round.
You got any votes in that car?
It's
got any votes?
I've got some lollipops and puppies with me.
I'll give you a $3 tax cut if you give us the fucking votes.
So here's why Labour's doing it. Yeah, they're talking to their base, right? So what they're doing is they're supporting their base. So Chippy doing that is saying to his base, you can trust us in these areas. For example, trans rights. Now I know that's not a big popular percentage of the population. It's not a big voting bloc, but what he's saying to those on the left who are ardently in support of that minority, you can trust us with that minority. So he's speaking to his base. That's the first reason he's doing it. The second reason he's doing it is to make sure everybody knows what a whack job the messaging from New Zealand First is. So even if there are people sitting on the fence going, no, National New Zealand First, National New Zealand First, well, what am I going to do to hear this repeated anti-vaxxer, anti-mandate, anti-trans thing put onto New Zealand First? I don't think it's going to win Labour any votes, but I think what Chippy and Labour are going to do is make sure everybody at least knows what that is out there. And for some people, that'll attract them to New Zealand First. But what the payoff will be between those that'll attract and those that'll repulse, I guess that's what they're looking at. Joey.
Yeah. Look, I think you're right. I hadn't thought about this, but I'm going to agree with it. Hipkins should not repeat as much as we want to, as much as we agree that coalition of chaos is going to come back to bite Luxon. That three-headed monster that he was talking about is going to haunt him because he's obviously leaving the door just to open a little bit of a crack for Winston to come through. But yeah, you're right. The more I think about it, the more that I dislike that he's picking up that messaging, because it hammers home the point that a coalition is a bad thing.
Well, either coalition, and it also makes them look weak, like they can't come up with their own pithy little saying. It's not smart.
MMP is built for coalition.
Yeah.
It's one of the like I'm voting along those lines because I want Labour to come further left, so I'm going to vote for someone further left. Yeah. And that's how it works. That's why we don't have first past the post anymore. But yeah, you're right. It's speaking to the base, and I think they do need to do that because let's be honest, the past 3 weeks have not been good for Labour's base, especially those towards the left-hand side of Labour, where he's got criticism for being, weak or a little bit wishy-washy, and it's not everything that everybody wanted.
It has
maybe
been
it's
really
just shoring up the loss.
It's been really interesting to see. There's been a little bit of titter on Twitter over the weekend about National stumbling, National peaking too early. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but in the weekend, and I haven't got it to play tonight, maybe I'll drag it up for tomorrow night. In the weekend just gone, Luxon was having to defend his abortion views again. So that came out in a conversation. He was defending it again. Now, I think that Labour should be screaming that from the rooftops. In fact, Chippy did. That's in one of those conversations. Chippy did talk about women's rights. I will look after women's rights. There are people in National who celebrated when women got the right to choose taken away from them. So he did push that. So he did it, and because of that, journalists then ask questions. Now, no one's been as hard nosed as we would be yet and gone, now you think abortion is akin to murder, Mr. Luxon. If you were the Prime Minister, are you telling us you wouldn't try and stop murders happening in New Zealand? Because that seems very bizarre to me.
You can have a little bit of murder, a little bit of special murder as a treat.
Yeah.
I've been told that that's a murder that I must not do anything about. Yeah, I've said this, right, for as long as we've been doing the show, right? I said my biggest concern with National is that fundy, conservative, very socially conservative core of National. It's bigger than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been able to shore up their support over National's lean years. So,
and remember what Suze Wilson said when she came out with Luxon's dilemma. And to make it really clear, Luxon's dilemma is that he has said very clearly he'd do nothing about abortion. But one of the reasons he said it is because he's a populist. And that's not a popular position at the moment. What if society changes? What if all of a sudden there's quite a big block of people that would like restrictions around abortion? Then his dilemma is, what does he do then? His natural inclination with his religious beliefs is to not have abortions. Right, that would be, I mean, if you said to him, if you're pro-life, then you are about not having abortions. Forget the inaccurate type. What it means is pro-live birth, because then once the kids are born, the National Party and the right go, fuck them and look after themselves. So it's pro-live birth. But in saying that, if there was like a 90, being silly, 70% wanted more restrictions on abortions, then Luxon would be all in, because that would be the popular thing, and it would also line up with his personal beliefs. Now, it's not popular, so he's made the decision not to further it. But the dilemma is, should it become popular, should there be a swing in the marketplace like there has been before, which, to be honest, I don't see coming. But if there was, then what would he do? What could the country expect of him?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think this is really interesting. And I think the humbug between Winston and Seymour is just fascinating. You know, Winston saying overtly he's inexperienced and he's an extremist, and Seymour saying, he's fucked up so much in the past, why would we trust him again? Winston is a vindictive old prick, you know, and I just imagine, I honestly could imagine, let's say that National and ACT get to 58 or 59 seats together. I could imagine if Winston felt like it, sitting cross benches and having a minority government and every policy needing to be gone through some kind of process. I also could imagine him giving supply and confidence, because then he's not actually in government with them, but he's propping them up. But I don't see that happening, because Winston has an ego, and I don't imagine that he would be happy to take second fiddle to Seymour, especially with what Seymour's saying about him. And there's another one of Luxon's dilemmas. What's he going to do? I mean, like, honestly, without trying to play the kind of games that they are, talk about chaos. At least on the left, they'll be pretty much in agreement with going forward. Like they'll want to work with each other. Like Māori Party, the Greens and the Labour, they will want to work together. On the right, you've got two parties that don't want to work together. I mean, that's chaotic. That's the definition of chaos.
Another thought I've had, right, is you've mentioned it, like Winston is a shrewd, vindictive operator.
Yep.
If they go into any sort of negotiation, do you think that Luxon has the negotiating nous to come out on top? If you put those two in a room to thrash out an agreement, I would not put my money on Luxon coming out as a winner on that one.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I also heard someone, it might have been, we had this, you probably don't know of him, a guy called Shane DePoe. He's new to the world. He came on Thursday night show. Like I said, the beats.
Yeah, I heard you had a clean face on the show.
A clean face. Maybe it was him who was talking about Luxon as a CEO. You don't have to do that, because what you say goes. So actually, the idea of negotiating and actually working between people and coming to a compromise, you don't have to do when you're CEO. You go, this is what we're doing. And so it will be interesting to see if that is a part of his repertoire.
Yeah, I note with interest. I think it was today, actually. Sorry, I should have brought this up earlier. Mike Hoskins had a go at Luxon on his show to rule out Winston. Asked him the question 6 times in a row with no response.
Well, let's pause then. Let's go and have a look. I mean, I'm not going to play this whole thing, because it's basically one question asked over and over and over and over and over again, but you'll get the idea.
Chris Hipkins has ruled out Winston Peters. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I mean, my view very clearly is that if New Zealanders want a guaranteed change of government, and they want a strong, stable-led, national-led government, there's only one thing to do, and that is party vote national.
Are you still open to working with Winston Peters?
Well, as I said, I've been very clearly saying he's not above the threshold, he's not in Parliament, and what I'm focused on is making sure I maximise the national party vote. And that's the only way that you
National
can
party
change this
vote
government,
twice
get a
so
strong,
far
stable-led
in
national
the first
government.
28 seconds.
Well, as I said to you, my drive is to make sure I maximise the party vote for national.
Three
that is the
times.
guaranteed change of government that New Zealanders want and can get if they
Three
do that.
times in 40
and I've been making the
seconds.
case since the beginning of the year. We've got over 35 policies that are really about making sure how we rebuild this economy, how we restore law and order, how we deliver better health and education. That's what I'm focused on.
So just to be clear, you're not ruling out working with Winston.
What I'm being really clear about, and I continue to be very clear about, is there's only one guaranteed way to change this government, and it is the party vote.
Be very clear
Four
about it,
times.
that's why I had to
So just be
repeat it.
clear, that's 4 times in a minute and 6 seconds. And remember, that minute and 6 seconds is with about 5 questions. So that's probably 4 times in 30 to 40 seconds of him talking. Party vote national. And you're right. You're right to laugh. To be very clear, you're not ruling out Winston. To be very clear, what I am saying is party vote national. You know, that's not being very, I'm not going to play anymore. You get the idea. That goes on for another 4 minutes.
And
So-
I mean, just the devil's advocate here, right? He's not bad at staying on message, and he knows these things will be clipped down to soundbite, and the soundbite must include party vote national.
Yep. Fair.
So that's what he's hammering. I mean, even they've said that they're contesting Epsom. You know, how hard they'll contest it, that's a different story. But that's something that they have stood aside. That
Goldsmith's been in there. They've always contested it. There's always been an MP there, but they've done the handshake and said, you know, if our guys want to vote, but they have always technically contested it. But this time they're actually going, vote for us. 2 ticks.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Will people in Epsom, lefties in Epsom, vote for Paul Goldsmith to get rid of Seymour?
Well, but the thing at the moment, it doesn't matter because they're polling at 12 to 15%. I mean, they've missed that opportunity. They could have done that for 3 elections, and they could have got rid of Seymour if the left had known how to fucking do politics. But they didn't, and he's in there, and now he's gone from 0.5, 0.7 to 7 to 15%. So, you know, good on you, lefties in Epsom. This is in part your doing.